So, Audie has a tendency to report really strange things, and yesterday they reported about a guy who actually turned his uncle's skull into a working guitar.
Okay, what?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a little macabre.
Sorry, we've got to release the dog. She'll be back.
She was crying a little. She wanted to go out with Laura and the kids. So, but today, um, new device turns human body into a battery.
What?
So scientists have figured out how to use the human body to power electric devices. And this study was published in the Journal of Science Advances. Researchers have created this stretchy, flexible device that can be worn like a ring or even a bracelet. And it generates electricity solely from the contact of human skin.
Okay. How much electricity are we talking about here?
Well, it's an ambitious goal, I'm sure, but the idea is that imagine never having to charge your smartwatch because it
Or
powers itself.
or just even a watch or I mean, can we get our electronics down to a point to where they are really don't require a lot of energy to operate? We could do some crazy stuff with that.
So it's a it's kind of a thermal electric power bank, so to speak. It provides you with constant power solely by being in contact with I'm I'm guessing the heat, the small amount of heat coming from my wrist. Um
Does it like
so it says this new device differs from the human batteries in the sense that Zhao's invention, that's the inventor, produces only 1 volt of energy for every square centimeter of skin it touches. Centimeter. That's a lot of volts. I mean,
oh well 1 volt for every centimeter?
so he claims that that's actually less voltage per area than most modern lithium batteries produce.
Yeah.
Still, it's enough to power like a smartwatch or a fitness tracker. So whenever you use a battery, you deplete the battery and will eventually need to replace it.
Well, imagine like if they figured out how to capture where kids are playing the video games all the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If they could capture that so you're no longer killing batteries on the kids' video games.
So these little thermal electric generators pull power from your body heat. That means when you get like hot and sweaty from exercising, your fitness tracker will actually have more thermal electric energy that it can turn into life for your fitness tracker.
That's amazing. I mean, if we could capture that and get it to where our use of electricity lowers, imagine what we could do.
So this device is also they say that it has no hazardous chemicals
Mm-hmm.
since the power comes from your own body. But there's no need to mess around with hazardous chemicals since the power comes from your own body. The device's stretchy nature also means that one size fits everybody.
Uh-huh.
Everybody?
Well, I mean, what does it look like?
It doesn't really give us a good.
Is it like a sticker, a Band-Aid type thing?
I'm
where
guessing.
it's adjustable?
I'm guessing, but it also says the device is fully recyclable A used wristband can be placed into a solvent that separates the electronics from the. It's made of polyamine, allowing them to be reused. The device can heal itself when it's damaged. If it tears, you can just pinch the torn edges together, and in a few minutes they'll seal back up just like human skin.
So
It's
okay.
just creepy.
Now what do you do with this the solvent to separate it from what?
To separate the electronics from the polyamine or the stretchy outer coating.
So it's like you're putting an ace bandage on and it has the electronics there.
Yeah. And Zhao, I'm guessing that's how you pronounce it, XIAO. This isn't his first time meddling with, electronics and kind of the mix of the human body. He has previously worked on electronic skin.
Now a double A is what? I think a double A is like 3 volts.
Yeah.
And one double A runs a lot of different equipment. So if you had multiple of these on you, you could theoretically get up to some pretty substantial operations.
Yeah.
Does it drain the human while it runs?
Oh, see, now smart watches, fitness trackers, those types of things, I can't wear them
Okay, why not?
because they actually, whatever the pulse is that's checking all of the different, body functions, movement, heart rate, all of that, whatever that is, causes pain in my arm clear up into the back of my neck.
Really?
And it's not like a sharp pain like when you immediately put it on, but within about 30-40 minutes of wearing it, it's so uncomfortable I cannot wear them. So I wonder if this would be the opposite of that. If it would
Wendy's here. Hi, Wendy.
like take from you.
Oh, can you hear us, Wendy?
Oh, yes. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Wendy.
We were just talking about some in the news. There's a new device that captures a little bit of electricity from the wearer to be used in electronics. So
I just saw that. I don't know a lot about it
So
at all, but I
strange.
just saw that.
Yeah.
And I'm also recently heard about the Aura Ring, Oura, and it captures all kinds of information like your sleep and your REM and all kinds of data about your body to help you be healthier.
where do you wear this Aura ring at?
It's a ring you wear on your finger.
Is that the one that falls apart?
I don't believe
Also,
so. It looks like a sturdy metal. And, I mean, obviously
Ah.
you can choose to take it on and off, but they say you can wear it in the shower, you can wear it to bed, and then you just like upload to the app what the biometric data is from
I
it.
wonder if I could wear that because that was kind of my closing comment was these fitness trackers. I've tried them both arms, top, bottom. They actually cause this deep kind of nerve pain when I wear them that goes
Ooh,
all the way up into the back of my neck. So I can't wear them,
right.
but I
That
wonder
means
if
your body doesn't want it.
yeah, I wonder if I could wear a ring.
Yeah,
I don't
maybe
know.
it's
It's OUARA.com is the website.
I'll have to check that
yeah. We'll
out.
definitely have to check that out. So, Wendy, now you have multiple shows that we want to do. Um, Everything from the past life stuff, the Kundalini stuff, and you also have an experience with I don't know if you like the word haunting or visitation.
Hunting, ghost, yeah, any of those terms are fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
and
had
that's
a very
kind of
interesting experience with a ghost. Yes.
yeah. We're excited for all of that, but let's
Before we start any of that,
yeah,
let's talk like where did this all start for you? Were you just like a normal kid kind of going through life and then you know.
Yes. So where it started for me, meaning the spiritual awakening, and where I started to get into some of the wow podcast topics,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
was I was conservative, having, the normal life. And what started to wake me up spiritually and make me just aware of so much more was I had a near death experience in 1997. And I didn't really integrate that experience for years. And I didn't know at the time that that's very common, that a lot of people just then don't talk about the NDE because they don't know who to talk to with, and it just takes a long time to make sense of it for yourself. So I just kind of buried that. And then the next big thing that happened for me was in 2010, so a decade ago. I was divorced. I'd been divorced for about 6 or 7 years, and life was going well. The kids were doing well. I have two daughters, and I had a good job and was loving my new home I'd built. So it was like, okay, it's time to meet a nice guy. And then my mind went blank, and I'm like, oh God, how do you do that? It had been like 25 years since I'd been on a date, and I was like, oh wow, I know. Ask my younger girlfriends. There's the best source to go to. So they recommended Match.com to me, the online dating website. I'd never heard of it. And they helped me put together a profile. And after a couple months on there, I changed the radius because you could put in
You
your like home or work zip code of how far, you're willing to be from someone you're going to match up with. The minute I changed my radius to 10 miles from home, this new profile came up. And I just looked at this man. I looked at the pictures. I looked at what he wrote, and I'm like, I know him. I absolutely know this man,
so
but I
on
couldn't
you're
figure
on
out from
Match.
where.
You're on
Pardon me?
Match and
I'm on Match looking at the computer screen, just looking at this dating
you kind
profile.
of have a connection, like maybe a past life or
Well, you're smarter than me, Jared. I didn't
something
know that.
other. Well, I wouldn't have known it either until I started
Right,
talking to
right,
people who know this
right.
stuff.
So I wrote to him, and it was as I was reading the profile, it was kind of like I knew what he was going to say next, and I knew how he was going to write it, and I just like knew like deeper meanings behind it. So I wrote back to him, and we connected, first email and then phone. And we played the How Do I Know You game for 3 weeks because that's how long it took us to meet.
So
And that
you
3 weeks was important
at this time
because
you're just thinking that you have possibly met him or come across him.
exactly, we're
Okay,
naming
so
like every professional association we've ever belonged to. We're naming like places we've visited. We're
Yeah.
just really trying to figure it out because we knew each other. And the very last thing he had written in his dating profile, I've never seen before or since. It was unique. And what he said was, any woman on a spiritual journey, I really want to meet you, particularly if you're interested in an LBL. So I scratched my head before I, wrote the response. I thought I better Google this because I
Yeah,
don't know
what
what
is
an
that?
LBL is. And what it stood for was Life Between Lives, which is a Dr. Michael Newton spiritual regression technique that takes 4 to 6 hours. And he was evidently getting ready to go for his second Life Between Lives hypnotherapy session. And that 3 weeks that it took us to sync up schedules, because it's like, we both had like a little bit of business travel or whatever was going on. And it gave me time to get Journey of Souls from the library and to read it. And I just knew that book just meant so much to me. And for listeners not familiar with it, Dr. Newton, Michael Newton, was a psychotherapist, PhD in California, didn't believe in past lives, believed he was an atheist, but he had this breakthrough client that came to him, and just, it was very convincing to him. It changed his practice. It changed everything he did. He then had over 7,000 patients that he did this longitudinal study of their past life regression sessions and their life between lives sessions with him, where the person journeys home during the session with the therapist. And what I mean by that is they drop their body, they go home,
Mm.
they go to the light, they go to heaven, nirvana, whatever your belief system is. And they have all these amazing experiences, reunions with family members and meeting with guides that could tell them more about their life and where they might be on or off track with what they were currently doing. Wise beings that could explain to them what their life purpose was and were they on track, off track, what they needed to do, that sort of thing. So just very mind-blowing information. And he was getting ready to go for this type of a session for the second time. So we met in a restaurant for lunch. It's a weekday and we've got like an hour. We're both at work. We sat there for 3 hours and just didn't want to leave because we realized, your punchline, Jared, we realized that that was the connection, was our past lives. We'd never met in this lifetime, but we both started to realize it was a past life connection.
Prior
So
to meeting him, had you done research or had any regression of your own for past lives?
No, this was truly my spiritual wake-up call, that being introduced to Journey of Souls and later finding out that man who became my boyfriend had the soul contract, which I believe is an agreement we make with another soul before we incarnate and take on our new life. He had the soul contract to wake me up spiritually, which he did by introducing me to Journey of Souls. So wasn't even on my radar.
so
But
yeah,
the minute I started reading it, I'm like, here's the answer book to what I didn't know I was looking for. Here's what was missing in my life that I didn't know was missing.
that's amazing. Well, at first I was going to ask you because you were alluding to someone you knew, and I was going to say, what was it like when you approached him with that? But he came with the breadth of knowledge on this.
He came with the breadth of knowledge. He had maxed out doing the like Christian men's group, and he just didn't feel like he was getting enough answers. He had done all the Bible study. He had done, all that. And just, he had then turned to reincarnation because someone had given him a copy of
Yeah.
Journey of Souls in a really unusual way and just said, hey, guy, I hardly know you. It was someone he met for like 2 minutes, but I think you're supposed to read this book. And this book just, came into my hands and I'm passing it on to you. And it's something you might want to take a look at. And that's what had started it for him.
Wow. So are you and him still friends, still together, still?
We're not, and
Uh-oh.
that's absolutely fine. We found 19 lives together. I have never found so many lives with one person. And it took us 8 years to work through it all.
Mm.
I am so thrilled that we did. I'm so thrilled and grateful that we met. It led to so many things for me. But I'm also grateful to have taken the last step, which was to part peacefully
Yeah. Well,
with them.
and you guys will come into contact again if this is a reoccurring trend. I'm sure in
I
the
feel like it's all
next
cleaned up.
in the
Who
next
knows? Never
everything.
say never, but
Yeah.
I feel like it's all done.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we've got all this breadth. So we're gonna have to have you in another time, multiple times. We're reading through all the stuff. And we're like, holy cow, this, so this is going to be multiple interviews, but you
Oh, you're
let
so
off.
kind. Thank you.
Hey, thank you for coming on. We love these stories. You let off with a ghost story.
Was this ghost encounter or this whatever it is, spirit encounter, was this prior to the soul's journey?
Sure. So the chronology was I had the ghost encounter first, and that did start to wake me up to a bigger reality, but it was a scary experience for me, and I didn't know how to make sense of it. What happened was I married in 1989, so this came first in the chronology, and we had the good fortune to buy a house pretty quickly, and we were living in the Boston area. And we bought a big colonial on 2 acres in Boxford, Massachusetts, which is about an hour north of Boston. And my husband traveled extensively. He was gone out of state for at least half the month, so at least 50% travel, sometimes 75% travel. And what happened was very quickly, it was like the first night he was gone, I just had this really vivid dream. And I didn't normally have such vivid dreams or remember them, very much of them at all when I woke up. But this dream was so vivid and it scared me so much that it literally woke me up. So what was happening in the dream the first night, the first time is, I've locked up the house. I'm, happy as can be. I'm up in the master bedroom, which is upstairs, right to the right of the stairs. And I hear footsteps coming up the stairs. Okay, now this is not okay.
Yeah.
I'm home alone. Everything's locked up for the night. I'm alone. There's no landline in the bedroom. There's no cell phones yet. We don't have a home alarm. We had talked about it, but we're just kind of tapped out from the budget of, moving in and buying our first house. And back then, home alarms cost a lot of money to install. So I am absolutely petrified. So I sneak out of bed and I had no lock on the door. So I'm like trying to put like a chair underneath to like jam the doorknob and trying to do that quietly. And the footsteps stop while I'm doing that. So now I'm like, well, crap, now what do I do? Is it safer to stay in this room? And there was no way to get out of the room. It was way too high. We didn't have a fire ladder, which we should have had. There just was no other way to get out of the house. So I waited a good 15 minutes and heard nothing else. And then it's like, okay, I've got to check the house. I can't just go back to sleep because there might be someone in the house and I may need to be calling 911. So I got to like beeline to the phone and be checking that the house is secure. So I do that. There's no one in the house. I check it really carefully. There's no broken windows. I even check outside with a flashlight because it had just snowed. So there was fresh snow and I could see there were no, footsteps outside. So I don't call the police. I go back to sleep. And my first call in the morning when I get to work is I call a locksmith and it's like, I need a really good lock put on my bedroom door. How soon can you do that? And he's like, oh, I can do that later today. Okay, fine. So I have a lock installed. So I go to sleep the next night feeling a lot better because I've got that nice new lock on the bedroom door. And I lock that and I go to sleep. Well, now I have the same dream. How can that be? So footsteps coming up the stairs again, but this time the dream continues. It's like a movie reel. And this time I'm not so scared because I've got that lock. And I'm noticing that the footsteps, they sound like really like small and tentative. It's not like a big guy like tromping up the stairs. It's like a smaller woman or a child. It's just like much more delicate. And this time in my dream, and then my dream continues, it goes beyond lucid. I'm like fully awake, seeing this, sitting up in bed. I see the walls of the house just fall away, and I see this big rock in our yard. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, maybe that was here years ago because it felt like the years were just rolling back and rolling back, was my impression. And I could see a young woman and I could tell she was from colonial America because she had the little white apron and the little white kerchief on over her clothing. And she's trying to climb up on this big rock and to get to the top of it. And she's looking toward the water. She's looking directly east, even though we didn't have any water view. I knew she was looking toward the water. and I could just feel her heartbreak. I mean, that was the sense, was just this immense heartbreak because she's looking for her beloved and he's not coming.
Mm.
So, and I got the impression, oh, she's waiting for him to come from the sea and something's happened, he's not coming. So the dream then continued. I had it a couple times a week and it would like always be going like a little bit further, a little more detail. So I worked through my fear. Obviously, this was a ghost. She couldn't hurt me. I worked through my fear around that. And I just wanted to help her, but I had no idea what to say or what to do. It was 1990. I just had no clue. It's not like there were like ghost talk shows and Ghost Within My Child. And, you could Google and find these books and interest groups. It was a different time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I didn't know how to help her. And I did drum up my courage and talk to my husband. So we're both MBAs. We're like these really practical people. We're newlyweds. And he just kind of looks at me and he's like, Wendy, I don't think so. You must be having some anxiety over being home alone so much. Because this is a pretty big remote area.
Now,
It
did
was
you have
2 acre minimum
children?
zoning. So everyone lived, really far apart. A lot of them were 5 or 10 acre lots.
Oh, did you have children at this time?
No, we were newlyweds.
Okay,
We
so
had
it's
just
just you
just
in the
married,
house.
just moved into our new house, and I tried talking with my mom, and she also was like doing the no. I kind of jokingly call my mom Miss Spock because, no, it's got to be logical. It's got to make sense. And I can't, how can I make this be sensible or logical? Because they're not having the experience. They're not having the dreams. They're not having the lucid experience with it where they're fully awake. So I just didn't know what to do with it. So, life goes on, and we lived there for about 3.5 years. And we had company at different times. We loved entertaining. It was a big home. And at different times, we had people stay over with us. And, just you ask the hostess question the next morning, do you have enough blankets? Do you have enough towels? How'd you sleep? Just make
Mm-hmm.
sure somebody's comfortable. 3 different people took me aside over the time we lived there and said, you won't believe the dream I had last night. It was so intense. It was so vivid. There's this young colonial American woman, and she's heartbroken, and she keeps waiting for her man to
Mm.
come back over the sea, over the water, and he's not coming.
Call your
So,
mom. Mom.
Looking at them like, what? I never shared my dream with you. And I'm like, how can that be that someone else has the same dream, the same impression? That helped validate it for me a lot. This was not about me having anxiety. I didn't have anxiety about it after being scared to death the first time and
well,
putting the
yeah,
lock on.
the ghost is coming to house guests. It's coming to visit
Yes.
people who are just staying there, not.
Yes. And again, very sensible, logical people told me, I've never had a dream like this. I've never seen a ghost. I've never experienced anything like this. Yeah, one was one of my best friends, and one was one of my cousins, and one was one of my husband's friends and former coworkers that had these experiences. And again, I'd shared nothing with them about it.
Did you guys ever try to maybe do a seance or anything like
No.
that?
No,
I'm
I wasn't drawn to them.
I'm
I
thinking,
wasn't drawn to Ouija boards. I just
yeah,
didn't like things like that. And I didn't know to like try for a psychic reading, or I just didn't know anything about those areas.
yeah, I'm thinking back to the 90s. I knew nothing about any of that stuff.
Right.
That was deep underground stuff where people were a part of I don't know if
The
clubs
occult. I mean, it was the occult then. It was
or
like much more hidden.
just groups. Yeah, it wasn't.
It was far from mainstream.
Yeah, where now
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
internet.
So we then moved from that home and we relocated from the Boston area to Seattle. And I'll be honest, I just tried to forget about it. I just tried to bury it because I didn't know what to do with it. I would have loved to have helped her, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't know the simplest thing, like to say, you're dead. You need to go to the light. You'll feel so much better
Oh.
if you just cross over and go up to the light. Just look up.
Now,
And I didn't know to say that.
in the ghosts or in the hauntings, there's, from what we understand, I don't know because I've still never seen a ghost. I don't think. But there is like impressions in the fabric of time, I guess, and then there's actual
great way to put
spirit
it.
hauntings. Do you think she may have been an impression where it seemed like she kind of repeated the same thing
Exactly. And
every
ghosts
night?
do that. The imprint is like it's very repetitive because they're stuck.
Now, can you
Because
rescue those ghosts where we've heard that those ghosts sometimes don't, they're not really a ghost, they're a memory, where a ghost can do other things, can
correct.
break
And I would
off of a,
define this as a ghost, not just an
oh,
imprint.
okay.
But there was some very repetitive movement because she was always doing the same thing. She was always coming to this big rock. I could see what she was wearing. It's what's on the cover of my book, The Flow One Plymouth Plantation. I described it to the illustrator, and then she reenacted what I saw that ghost wearing, this long gold top and matching skirt, which was her best outfit at the time, because she wants her honey to come home. So she's got her best outfit on, and she's trying to get up this rock, and then she would like sit up on top of like a blanket on there, and just be watching for him to come, because that's where he used to come to her. That's one of the places that they used to meet. So she was watching for him. So she
did
was
you
just very stuck in this pattern.
did you ever
So
do
we
research on
moved.
the previous owners of the home? And
I didn't. I didn't reach out to them, and I did not find out. Boxford is a lovely, gorgeous, rural, affluent town. And it's a tiny, tiny town. When we moved there, I think it was about 3,000 people. I mean, that's how small it was. And because it was 2 acre minimum, and a lot of people had a lot of acreage because you had to have 1 acre per horse. So we'd be driving and I could see, I'm like counting like 10 horses. And I used to say to my husband, oh, look, they must have 10 acres. And I would do this from time to time. And he's like, wow, you've gotten really good at estimating acreage. I was just counting horses. I never gave my secret away to him. He's like, oh, she's gotten good at this somehow. But we moved to Seattle. I try and just let go of it because I don't know what to do with the experience. And it's literally 20 years later, because we moved in 1993, and it's now the year 2013. And what happens is one of my best friends contacts me by phone, and she says, are you sitting down? And it's like, oh, that's never good.
Oh yeah.
I said, I am now. What do you need to tell me? And she said, well, last night I had an interesting experience and it involves you. So I'd like to talk it through and just tell you I love you and let me know how I can be of help. And what she explained was 3 or 4 days before our phone call and her experience was she had gone to the bookstore and she wanted to buy the new Dr. Brian Weiss book, and the author of Many Lives, Many Masters.
mm-hmm.
And she said instead of buying that book, she just felt compelled to buy a book called Sacred Spaces. And she said it was, I'm sorry, my kitty's just making noise here. He'll
That's
settle
okay.
down in a minute.
Perfectly
Midnight
fine.
wants to help. Hey, we're real people here, right? We have
Mm-hmm.
some noise. Okay, let's see if I can get him to stop. Okay, he just wants to he's part of this story. We'll just acknowledge that.
Yeah. Yeah. He's fine. He's not hurting
And
nothing.
and so she buys Sacred Spaces and she gets home and she goes to just like throw it down on the kitchen counter because the kids are coming home from school. But she said she felt compelled to immediately read a chapter. And she's like, what is this about? This is so weird. And the chapter that she read was How to Clear Your Home of a Ghost.
Oh.
And she thought that was very odd because she was a new Reiki master and she felt like her home was well balanced energetically and she didn't have a ghost. So she read the chapter and then, was able to put the book aside. And about 3 days later, her dog wakes her up in the middle of the night and is just like staring at her. You know how your pet can wake you up just like staring at you when you're asleep. So, and the dog just won't leave her alone. And she thought, well, that's weird. It's the middle of the night. He doesn't normally have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. But she gets up to take the dog out so he doesn't wake everybody else up because he's starting to bark at that point. And that was very unusual too. So she goes to let him out the back sliders off the kitchen, which was next to the family room, and he goes berserk. He won't go out in the backyard, and he's just running in circles around in the family room. So she looks up and sees a specter. She sees a ghost. She sees something just going round and round and round in circles up on her ceiling.
What did it look like? What was it?
Just like a white wispy thing
In her home?
in her home,
Yeah,
in her
forget it.
family room.
Yeah.
And she immediately thought, oh, that's why I was supposed to read that chapter in that book. Thank
Oh,
you. Thank you for
how
letting me
much
know that ahead.
dynamite do I need to buy today?
Right, right. So that good thing she listened to her intuition. So
Mm-hmm.
she said she spent about a half an hour wrestling with this ghost because she said the heartbreak, and she started to realize it was a young woman from colonial America. And she said the heartbreak of, she said she almost got sucked in by it, but she just kept telling her firmly, you're a ghost. You don't have a body anymore. You
Wait,
need
this
to go home. You need to go to the light.
this is a colonial female ghost, like the one that you had.
Yes, yes. And that's the punchline.
Did you bring
So
it
what
with
she
you?
then tells me on the phone the next day is that ghost is you. And you need to
Okay.
clean up your past life and get your, how family friendly are we?
What
Get your shit together.
you?
Get your
So
stuff
Whoa.
together.
so was it that ghost that you saw climbing the rock
Was you in your past
was you in a
life?
past life?
That's why you were so connected to it.
Exactly. Exactly.
What did you
And
have to?
obviously the energy was really strong because 3 guests sleep in our house and experience the ghost without me saying a word. And I have no idea it's me. So it took me literally 20 years to put the pieces together because we moved from from Boston to Seattle in 1993. And in 2013, my friend has this experience because in 2010 I'd met the soulmate that was waking me up spiritually, so I was now able to step to the plate and say, oh my gosh, I have a ghost. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know you could be here twice like that. I just and I could
How
start to work with it.
how do you
And I
clear that
think the
energy?
Yeah,
reason
what do
I
you have to do
went
to?
to my friend, again, it was huge validation. And what
Oh
she
my God.
realized, she said, oh my gosh, I was in that past life with you. And we were best friends and we were next door neighbors. And as she was describing it, I was getting it too. And I said, oh my gosh, we also worked together in that lifetime. And then we met again this lifetime through work. And became great friends because we've known each other so many times.
What do you have to do to clear your own? What do you have to do for the ghostception?
That's a great question.
Do
So I had to figure out,
do you
why
work on
is
yourself
this
now?
ghost so stubborn? What have I not done? What lesson have I not learned? What am I hung up on? Why am I still here? So I just started learning about that past life. It's like, well, I have to understand who she is to be able to understand, because she's clearly just not going to the light. My friend couldn't clear her. We hadn't been able to clear her at my house, even with, 4 of us seeing her, because none of us knew what to do at that time. And so I had a past life regression session, and it was one of my first ones that I ever had as the client before I became a past life regressionist. And um, that past life, my name was Anne Warren, and I married Thomas Little, so became Anne Warren Little. And that past life came through I spoke as her. I spoke as that past life, as that persona for over an hour. I mean, there was so much detail and description, and I started to realize I see why she's so heartbroken. I see what's going on. So she thought she was meant to marry the sea captain that had brought her over from England with her stepmother and with her four sisters in 1623 on one of the original Mayflower ships. Her father, my father, Richard Warren, came over in 1620 on the original Mayflower voyage, but it was mostly men on that voyage. There were not a lot of wives and children because they didn't know what they were, going into. It was just really a great unknown in many ways. And they had to build housing and, start growing crops. And so the wives and children were mostly sent for a couple years later. So I had the typical experience of coming over 3 years later for our family to reunite with my father. But I recognized in that life as Anne Warren, I recognized the sea captain. And I was like, oh my goodness, I know him. I just love him. We are primary soulmates. And this was all, I was like a 12-year-old girl. So it's like, what do you do with all that? Because I didn't understand at that time what psychic abilities were. And then I could just hear my guides narrating this in my head. So,
So you fell in love with the sea captain that brought you over in your past life, and he
yes.
maybe wasn't aware of that,
Well, he
or
became aware of it, and he turns out, bottom line, we have a clandestine relationship. I don't want to call it an emotional affair. Um, all through my teens until I'm about 17 or 18 years old. And he's the man that I'm waiting on top of that rock for. And we used to meet at the trading post because I ran the trading post with my best friend who lived next door. So we traded with the Native Americans. We traded with the Indians, and they were bringing corn, and they were bringing, because they grew a lot of maize, and they were trading furs because they were amazing hunters and fishermen. And so we were then trading that with European sea captains who would come in, and we would trade for things that we couldn't grow ourselves or couldn't, get ourselves at the colony. So that's how I was meeting up with the sea captain again and again. So naive young girl. I think he's single because he's got no ring on. We all wore rings. I didn't understand. Most seamen don't wear rings because you can get your finger caught. I mean, you can lose your finger or
oh
your
yeah,
hand, by working at sea. But I didn't know
yeah, and
that.
and also it makes it harder to be shady when you pull into different ports. I not to go that far, but
Right. So I think we're meant to marry. I think he's courting me
and
because
you're
he
like,
always brings me a
You were
special
12?
gift every time, tells me how special I am to him. And I just think, well, it's his job that keeps him away, and that's just the way it is for now. So, and I'm this very romantic, young girl, and just think that we're going to get married. But he then suddenly stops coming.
mm,
And in that same year, my father dies very suddenly, and leaves behind a grieving widow, leaves behind five teenage daughters and two infant sons. So, wow, now we're really in a pickle
your
in the
mom was
1600s.
your mom was
How are you going
plugging
to?
it out in the 1600s to make 7 children.
Right, right. How is this woman going to support seven children? Exactly, exactly.
Wow.
Do you know how you
And
passed away in that life?
do I know how I passed away?
Yeah.
Yes, I passed away during what was called King Philip's War, and I was in my 60s. I did recover from the heartbreak and just the romantic nonsense Nonsense isn't a kind word, but I did get over it. And 2 or 3 years later, I married a wonderful guy that was a wonderful match, and he'd come over from England, and he was the colony's first barrister, so he was the first attorney. So the population was growing, and we went on to have 9 children. Guess what? It's the 1600s.
9.
And just, loved it.
There's
And
no
just,
epidurals. There's no
yeah, no, no
operating
epidurals.
rooms. There's no saddles on the beds.
How does that
No.
work for your soul's journey to be split like that, to be stuck in that mental um, construct of being so torn and broken, but still move on and have this wonderful life? I mean, does that just play into the idea that we exist in many places all at the same time?
It certainly can. I mean, you could go quantum physics with this conversation and say it's all happening now, and string
Yeah.
theory and, the butterfly effect. You could certainly go there. But I live until my 60s, children, great grandchildren, just this huge family is just coming out. We are just populating like crazy, from that initial settlement. We outbred the Indians, basically, was what happened, as well as there were more ships and, more and more European, colonization going on, not just at Plymouth Plantation, but down in Virginia were the two main points. And I die um, I die very early in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. It's King Philip's War, and the Native Americans are uprising. They are losing their ability to live. We are just encroaching on land everywhere. We are buying and selling what used to be open and free. I mean, there's just two totally different systems going on. And finally there was an uprising, and I heard my cat just yowling, which is why he was fussing a few minutes ago. He's like, tell my part of the story. So I'm back in the 1600s, and I'm now a widow, and my husband has died, and I'm feeling lonely. So I get this cool black tomcat for company, and he likes to go out at night. So I get up because I hear him yowling to come in. And the minute I step outside on that little tiny stoop, I feel this searing pain in my lower left abdomen. And it's an Indian arrow. So I go down and I die. But I was, instead of passing over to the light, in that lifetime, I was just frantic. I'm like, where's my family? I've got to find everybody, because I can just see, I just hang around just above my body, and I can see the melee. I can see the attack. I can see most of the settlers are killed, but I don't know, where's my family? Where's, because I had such a big family, and there's other ghosts rising up around me, and I'm trying to ask them. I'm trying to ask the Native Americans that are still in bodies, where's so and so, where's so and so. And many of them knew me. Interestingly, a lot of the male Indians knew me because I'd been in the trading post for years, and they knew me, and they knew me by name, but they didn't know the names of most of the other people because they just, wouldn't have had a reason to have met. So they can't answer any of my questions. I needed to go to the light. But because the last thing William Pierce, the sea captain, said to me when he left when I was 17, 18 years old, he'd said, wait for me, Anne. You're so special. I'll be back for you. And I'm thinking, okay, well, it's now 40 years later and he hasn't come back. He must have meant wait for him when I die. We're supposed to cross over together. I know that makes no sense, but that was my logic at the time. So I thought, no, I'm not going, because lots of, angels and guides came and said, go up to the light. You'll get your questions answered there. You'll heal there. You'll understand this lifetime. I'm like, no, I've got to wait for William Pierce. I've got to wait for William. Well, guess who William is in this lifetime? Any guesses?
The guy you met
It woke me up spiritually.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
exactly.
he's
It became my boyfriend.
is he a reoccurring guy? Oh, okay. So many questions. One, how are you reborn? How does spirits work? Does part of the spirit stay back and part get reborn? Does
Exactly. I believe our energy, our soul energy is huge because it does, when it's not in a body, it's amazing and it's very large. So I believe a portion of, call it our higher self, our soul, always stays with the light, is my belief.
well we've
And then we choose to incarnate with a percentage of our energy into any given lifetime.
yeah, we've heard that commonly.
Okay.
We've done a couple. We both had regression sessions. Okay, I had a
Mm,
lay on the couch session, but Betsy had a
okay.
regression session, and but I think this is my first go around. It's a whole Neanderthal thing, cockroach, whatever. But okay, so there's that, and then have you had lives between the colonial time and now where you and we'll call him Captain Pedophile would would meet up commonly there as well?
We met again in the interim. We specifically had this amazing life. It's one of my favorite lives in the 1800s. And we were supposed to wake up and together clean up my ghost incident, but neither of us woke up spiritually that
But you
lifetime. We
guys
had
were
this
together in that lifetime?
We were together in the 1800s, and I found where, and I was able to do a past life
Like as
pilgrimage. We went together in Othello, Washington, which is this tiny little rural part. It used to be Oregon Territory when we were there in the 1800s.
So
And we were married writers. We were gentlemen farmers. It wasn't that hard to earn a living. We could grow or trade for most of what we needed, and you purposefully worked out with the farms next to you. Okay, you grow this, I'm going to grow this, and you grew different things to trade. And we were both writers. And I wrote almost 50 novels that lifetime. No children. It was a rest life, it was a reward life, but we didn't wake up spiritually, so we didn't get my ghost home.
why wake up if you've got an ideal
I
life?
know, it was like nirvana. It was so awesome. And our best friends on the adjoining farm, they were also writers. And I just have such memories of us sitting around like this like oil lamp or whatever it was, just like trading like pages and talking about what we were going to write next. And
How do
it
you
was so fun.
how do you earn a rest life?
I think you choose one. I don't think you have to earn one. I think it's a free will choice
Okay,
that
how
we
do I tell myself to do that?
make a mental note, remember it, start building, yeah, start making those notes for yourself.
yeah, I often tell myself, self, if you've chosen anything else that's really hard, just say just for the record, I take it back.
Right.
I
Well, I
don't
mean,
want it.
seriously, we have soul contracts that don't serve us anymore. They don't make sense.
Like who signed me up for this? Oh, it was
Right,
me? Great.
right. And some of
Great.
it, I mean, some of the challenging stuff, with some hard work and some realizations, and you realize, sure, that layoff sucked at the time and was horrible, but look at all the good things that came out of it. Because if I hadn't been laid off there, I wouldn't have gone to this next place, or I wouldn't have started my own business, or I wouldn't have had the time to write my first book. Or you do have to look for that, because just because it's challenging doesn't mean it's wrong or that we can't get through it. But alternatively, on the other hand, we do also have some nonsense soul contracts at times. That's one of the things I help people do in their session with me, is look at, do you have soul contracts that do not serve you in this lifetime? Because if so, can we learn the lesson right now? And the
Yeah.
lesson is often forgiveness or gratitude. It's often, so often, one of those two things. And that's why that soulmate and I kept meeting again and again and again because we hadn't forgiven each other fully.
You
And
had
so we
kind of
couldn't part peacefully.
a
It's
toxic
some
soul
karmic stuff
contract.
to work out.
Right, right.
Tell me about
Um,
a past life pilgrimage. You mentioned that in
what I
passing.
mean by a past life pilgrimage, you may have a feeling, you may be really drawn, and it's like just so on your list. Don't make it your bucket list way in the future. Make it happen now as soon as you can. Even if it's going there via meditation or, learning and reading about if it's Egypt or if it's Hawaii or if it's somewhere in Europe or it's somewhere, wherever it is. But my belief is that we can make um, a trip. So I've made about maybe 7 or 8 past life pilgrimages to places I thought or knew I'd lived before, and then would go there and experience it.
So you would
And I
go
first heard this.
physically, like book a flight, go to that place.
Yes, exactly. And it doesn't have to be book a flight, because I first heard this concept from a friend, and she just was in a situation where she could travel internationally, and she just was in a very different situation than me. It's like I was working full time, nose to the grindstone, raising 2 kids, animals at home. I just wasn't in the same situation. So I realized, well, wait a minute. Why do all of our past life pilgrimages have to be far and hard and difficult? So I just meditated and asked my guides, hey, how about a day trip? How about a weekend or an overnight? Is there anywhere local that I could go? And then those lifetimes started coming in, and I went places like Ramona Falls in Oregon. I live in Seattle, so that was a weekend trip. Multnomah Falls, also in Oregon. Evidently have a waterfall theme. Also a place, La Push, out on the Olympic coast, which is where they filmed the Twilight movies, the beach scenes. I had a past life on
Twilight,
one of those
Twilight.
Sparkly vampires.
beaches.
Oh, the sparkly vampire movies.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah,
the teenage girls, sparkly vampire movies.
yeah.
But my girls were teens when those came out, so
Oh, I'm
it
sure it
spoke to
wasn't a
them, and I
heartbreaker.
took them on a road trip.
Yeah.
And I think that's what made me start to realize, oh my gosh, this is really familiar here.
So,
So,
how many past lives of your own have you dug into?
a large number, over 100,
Whoa.
which is unusual. It's not a contest. There's no particular number that's right for
The
you.
Guinness Book of World Records
Well,
holder.
I'm already losing this contest. I'm telling you, this is my first go round. This is my first batch. I was a cockroach 46 years ago, and
So you're coming up through the Buddhist tradition, or
this is
you're
my
moving up the chain of life.
first stab at it.
And we can have really dense amnesia, and we just don't remember. I mean, I didn't remember a darn thing until I was 49 and met that soulmate that was meant to wake me up. And then a few years later, the ghost experience comes through, and I start to do
Mm.
that cleanup. And then I'm making sense of the near death experience that I had in 97 when I was pregnant. So, just things started to make sense.
Mm.
So, Wendy, to close this out, they can find you at wendyrosewilliams.com, correct?
Yes, exactly.
And some of the things that she offers, I mean, so you call yourself a past life adventure guide. I dig
Yes.
that.
Yeah, we've got a couple of comments here about
Yeah, I dig that. But you do healing sessions. Are those in person or over the phone or both?
They're via Zoom. Yeah, interestingly, I did a session in late 2016, the one that became my first book, Regression Healing 1. And at the end of that session, my guide said, just clear as day, thank you. This is the last session you're doing in person. I was originally a traveling hypnotherapist, and I would go to people's homes or offices, that type of thing. And my guide had been doing that for several years, part-time, because I had the full-time day job. And my guide said, this is the last one you're going to do. in person, you need to now do some retraining and learn how to do them via Skype. And I'm like, what's Skype? And always so interesting to have guides tell you technology that you haven't heard of. And nowadays it's via Zoom. So I offer either 2.5 hour or 4 hour past life regression sessions, which I record for the client, and they've then got that audio file. We go to a healing temple, we connect with their guide, we do the past life regression, and then we go home to the light. So that's the 4 aspects of what we do.
And then the next thing that's listed is a Mary Magdalene channeling. What is that?
Yes, so I channel Ascended Master Mary Magdalene, which is a really wonderful privilege. And clients, people who are drawn to that, just get to have a conversation with her. As I do my best to step aside and let her just really speak through me. And she loves to talk about family and relationships. She's surprisingly good with money and business. She financed Jesus's ministry in many ways, is my belief, from family money that she had. And she just answers questions for people.
Oh. Laura asks, how how does it not create anxiety going through all these lives?
That's a great question. And amazingly, I did have some anxiety from birth right on through having my own first past life regression. But because working with that therapist one-on-one for 2 hours, I worked with a Newton therapist, was my first session, because I'd been so jazzed with the Journey of Souls information. And just having that loving space where you're free to remember what you need to remember. And she helped me go back to some scenes in my own present life and clean up things that I hadn't realized how upset I was still upset about. And just being able to do that. And I then was able to vision 2 past lives. And that amazed me, because I was an MBA. I was pretty left-brained. I was pretty skeptical. I didn't know how to meditate. I didn't know if anything was going to happen, or if I'd be laying there with my eyes closed. Like, what did you say, Jared? Like a lump of coal. Like, I've never done this before. But being able to raise my vibration and work with her, and to vision that, and to start to hear my intuition, to start to hear my soul, to start to hear my guides, and to be able to trust it, that changed everything. So I actually released anxiety in that first 2-hour session, because there's wonderful techniques that are used, and you're not afraid. You may go through what sounds intense or scary to us as we're sitting here talking about it, because we're in our, more in our 3D human aspect, but you pull up to a higher vibration. So the clients I work with, typically it's anxiety, depression, and pain. Those are kind of the big 3 buckets of what comes up. So it's a great question. I hope that helps.
Yeah, we've got your books pulled up here through the Audible site, and well, we've got your one book, the Flow One Plymouth Phantom, and
No. Plymouth Plantation.
Plymouth Plantation. Sorry.
But I think Jared's got a pretty good alternate title there.
Yeah, that's a book too. But and you also do the narration on said book.
I did. Yes, I narrated both of them. Yeah, they just were so personal, and enough kind, encouraging people said, why don't you record your own books? And I'm like, oh gosh, you have to get used to your own voice. And I'm like, okay. And then I'm going to get all the, are you a Canadian comments? And no one likes their own voice, but they were my babies. So yes, I did narrate them and had a wonderful experience doing that.
Yeah, and you've got a couple other books here. You've got now. Is this one you narrating as well? The regression
Regression
healing.
Healing one, I narrated with a friend. A friend kindly voiced it for me because I'm not a trained voice actress, and I didn't think I could voice so much of the male dialogue because
Mm.
the client is the main character and he's a male in Regression Healing one. So a sportscaster friend kindly voiced it with me. He had just the perfect energy for it. And yeah, it's a pretty fast audio book.
So
It's
while
just
you're
over three
reading, he's in the
hours.
background going, "You're on the 40, the 30."
We're gonna bring it home.
There's quite a few. Yeah, that's
And people can reach you through your website. Do you also
Yes.
have a Facebook page or other
I do have a
means?
Facebook page, and I'll send you the link for that because the reason I use my full name is Wendy Williams. It's just a kind of a common name, and you'll get the other Wendy Williams with the TV show.
yeah, the model show. Yeah,
So I'll
I've
link the Facebook page and the Instagram and all that
yeah.
for you if you
Please
like. And
send
I
it on
also
an
have
email.
a
We want to put it in the show notes. We want to make it so any of our listeners or viewers that want to contact you, they'll be able to go to the
That would
show
be
notes.
wonderful. And I'm happy to offer complimentary 15-minute phone appointments. So just people can request that via the website. And I just like
Okay.
to
Yeah.
understand, what's going on and if I can be of service to people. And I also have a podcast the second and fourth Sunday of the month at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, called Waking Up Spiritually. And I'll include that link.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for coming on. Now,
Thank you.